This week's episode is brought to us by our Explorer of the Week, D. Nandwani. Now, thanks to D being one of our Patreon members at Explorer of the Week and above, we are able to talk about this week's subject, which is the Terry Lovelace Event. Now, back in June 1977, Terry Lovelace, who was then an EMT with the United States Air Force, was camping with friend Toby when he had a bizarre UFO encounter that involved abduction and later on, it seems, alien implants as well. So you can join myself and Neil here on Aliens Explored as we discuss the Terry Lovelace event, and if you too want to be an Explorer of the Week, just like Dean Nandwani is this week, then you can go to patreon.com/Aliens Explored and pick a tier at Explorer of the Week and above. But thanks again to D. Nandwani, this week's Explorer of the Week.
Aliens Explored is a weekly podcast exploring famous and obscure cases of UFO sightings, alien abductions and other strange events from both a believing and a skeptical perspective whilst keeping an open mind. I'm Stu Jackson, a professional actor and amateur ufologist with a particular interest in the crop circle phenomenon. I'll be debating that otherworldly visitations are real. The truth is out there.
And I'm Neil Kelly. I'm a professional actor as well and used to work for the military as an intelligence analyst. I'll be arguing from a more doubtful point of view. I mean, it's all a bit far-fetched, isn't it? Hello listeners and welcome to Aliens Explored, your weekly look at the mysterious skies and all the cover-ups associated with it. I'm one of your hosts, Neil Kelly.
And I'm your other host, Stu Jackson. Lots of cover-ups happening.
Lots of cover-ups, yeah.
Indeed. How are you keeping, Neil?
I'm doing very well, thank you. And you?
Good. Yeah,
keeping well?
I am. I'm actually... I've been feeling quite positive lately. So, I've had a bit of a shit year this year. I know you know about this, Neil.
Yes, I think our listeners do as well.
Yeah, some of our regular listeners have probably sort of picked up on it. I try to be as positive and upbeat as I can be for these recordings, but certainly I enjoy them, which is really helpful. But yeah, I've been a bit down this year. But I've these last few days I've been rather more positive and more upbeat and optimistic and fired up and
Oh, what's brought this on? Is it just a change in the weather, or is it something more profound?
I think it's a combination of three things. So I have been getting out more, doing more walks. So I've been getting more sunshine, which I know does have a massive impact on that. I've booked myself in for some speed dating. So
yay!
I've got that to look forward to.
Back in the saddle again.
Well, and on top of that, I also have a couple of dates lined up. One with a lady I've known. I'm not going to name names, but I've known her for some years, and it's always been one of those. When I was single, she wasn't, and when she was single, I wasn't, and we've always got on really well as friends, and we've got a nice date planned quite soon. So I'm looking forward to that.
And she's aware that this is a date.
I think so.
Not just friends. So. I always think that's really risky. Trying to, if you've had a long-standing friendship with someone and just suddenly, let's change this to something else.
Well, I'm not going to go like a bullet a gate. So
But
I'm going to
you'll be
be
wearing
careful,
a nice
but
aftershave. And
I will be making an effort, definitely. But I mean, look, the worst that'll happen is we go out, as friends, have a nice meal, and it'll be a lovely evening because she's a lovely person. So that's the worst case.
yeah.
Yeah. But as to whether or not she notices it, I mean, I'm saying it's a date. It's sort of. I think maybe we're both seeing how things go.
Well, that's a good place to come from, isn't it?
Yeah, and the third thing that's changed recently is a couple of weeks ago I started back in therapy, and that's been really helpful.
Oh, great!
Yeah, back in counselling. So yeah, I'm feeling much more positive about myself, about my future, about my place in the world. Yeah,
It's all good.
so thank you for asking. But that's not what we're here to talk about, is it?
No, we're not. We're not. You just led us off topic again. No, this week we're talking about the Terry Lovelace event of June 1977. That's today's topic.
Now this is a really interesting one. This only came to light a few years ago because poor old Terry. He'd sat on this and remained silent about it for a good 40 years because of fear of ridicule, because fear of losing his very prestigious job. So Terry Lovelace is a retired assistant attorney general. United States of America.
He was also in the Air Force, wasn't he? He was EMT. A medic in the Air Force.
He was, and he was in the Air Force when this occurred, although he wasn't working at the time. He was off camping with a friend. But as a so to become an assistant attorney general, you've got to be a grounded person. You've got to have good head on your shoulders, be reliable.
And seem to be reliable.
Yes.
Well, you've got to be trusted, haven't you?
So while I'm always saddened when people do keep their stories private and secret, I can also understand it.
Given what we've seen happen to some people who haven't kept their stories private and secret,
yes.
They really wish they had.
Exactly.
So he could see what happened to other people. And given that this what was it called, the incident at Devil's Den?
Yes, so that's an area of North Arkansas. I always want to say Arkansas.
Arkansas.
We say Kansas.
Kansas and Arkansas.
Arkansas.
Yeah.
Spelt the same. Anyway, Devil's Den is an area of North Arkansas. And he was out camping with his friend Toby, not the same Toby who is our friend here on the show.
Who was our Toby. Explorer, our last week's Explorer of the Week, not that yes. Toby. If you're listening, Toby, we don't mean you. Unless you are actually friends with Terry Lovelace, and let us know.
We know Toby's not that old. I mean, I was 4 years old when this event took place, and I'm much older than Toby. So, yeah. So they're camping. They see 3 strange bright lights coming up over the horizon. They see a UFO. And again, it's our friend, the black triangular UFO.
Oh, that old UFO.
One. They describe it as being as wide as 2 city blocks. Now, I thought now, obviously, this is 1977, before America went to the football field standard of measurement. or refrigerator standard.
Now, did that standard come from the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind? Because that was made in 1977, wasn't it?
No, it's more recent. It's like in the media, they'll say, and such is as big as 3 football stadiums, or,
Okay.
rather than just say it's so many meters or even so many feet, they'll say it's as big as this thing.
It's nice. It's nice to compare it to something relatable. If you just say it's this many thousands of meters, it's hard to picture in your head. If you say a football field or 2-3 football fields, people can imagine that better, I think.
But when they omit how many feet or meters it is, I'm not getting into the whole which is better, metric or imperial. Imperialism's no good for anyone, though. But yeah, anyway, he describes it as wide as 2 city blocks, so it's a big old thing. Even because blocks can be different sizes, but even a small one, that's going to be pretty big. These lights shine on them. They get the sense that they're being scanned. The lights shut off, and suddenly they feel very sleepy. Next thing Terry knows is waking up. His mate Toby sticks his head out the tent. They see, certainly Terry sees some small people in a meadow below them, about a dozen of them, and says to Toby, "What are those kids doing there?" And Toby says, "Don't you remember? They're not kids. They took us and they hurt us." And on Toby saying that, Terry gets these flashbacks, these sudden flashes of images of being taken aboard this craft. And years later, he undergoes hypnosis. I know your opinions on hypnosis, which I'm no doubt you're going to remind us of.
Recovered memories, yes.
Yes, but he recovers memories under hypnosis. And yes, he was taken aboard this craft by these aliens, these diminutive aliens, and experimented on, basically. So you've got lost time phenomenon, you've got memory loss, you've got alien abduction.
Well, Lovelace
it's quite a story.
He said he never intended to tell that story or write a book about it. He has written a book called Incident at Devil's Den, a true story by Terry Lovelace Esquire, compelling proof of alien visitation. Apparently he took up jogging in 2012, and even though he hated being in wide open exposed spaces, but every time he got to the 2-mile mark, that's about 3 kilometres for our European listeners, a place just above his knee would go numb. And so he had it looked into, and medical tests revealed an unexplained piece of metal the size of a fingernail implanted in his leg. But there was no scar. He'd never been in active combat. There couldn't have been shrapnel. No memory of ever being injured. Suddenly they found this little bit of metal right at the place where he would go numb. So interesting.
Alien implants.
That's what we're going to say. Yeah, I knew you were going to say that. Alien implants, of course it is. What else could it be?
Well, to be fair, so I'm actually going to play devil's advocate on this one a little bit.
Okay.
With where you say there's no scar tissue, I've had cuts, I've had incisions, and there's no scar tissue where they've happened. So it is possible to have something enter your body and there be no scar.
Well, not a permanent lasting scar, but there would have been some kind of mark for a while, wouldn't there?
Yeah, for a period of time, but
maybe a stitch or two. That
I always remember the story of a friend of mine. I'm going back quite a few years now. He was a metal worker, and he was getting he was having problems with his thumb. It was like a pain that he couldn't really work out why it was hurting, but there was a pain nonetheless. And he had his thumb x-rayed, and there was a large splinter of metal right up quite close to the bone under his skin. Now, obviously, this had happened when, he'd been working with metal, and a metal fragment had sort of stabbed him, and he probably got a cut and didn't think anything of it. It healed over, no scar left. He'd forgotten about it. Then years later, he's getting trouble from it. So he had to have it removed, obviously. But the metal, not the thumb. But yeah, so that can happen.
It can. I mean, doesn't the body tend to reject things? I mean, I was lifting an old wood pallet one time, and suddenly I got two splinters. One in the index finger of my. Is this the index finger that I'm showing you?
Yes, it is. The first. Yeah,
the index finger. Yes. The first finger of my left hand, and one in the first finger of my right hand. Two splinters simultaneously. Now, the one in my left hand, it was still protruding a bit, so I was able to get my teeth on it and pull it out. The one on the right finger had gone in too deep, and nothing happened for a week or two, and then my finger started swelling up, so until I could no longer wrap a bit of floss around it and floss my teeth. But then I sort of gave it a squeeze, and this thing came out like a missile out of its silo with a little bit of pus and blood, and pop, it was out. Your body does have a mechanism for ejecting foreign objects.
It does, and I've heard of cases where, things have kind of slowly risen to the surface of the skin over time. But I think if it goes deep enough, it depends what layer of skin, because your epidermis, your skin's made up of lots of different layers, isn't it?
Yeah, and
I think it depends how far in it goes. If it goes deep enough, that won't happen.
And it can move around, can't it?
Apparently so, yeah.
Yeah, it can move. Yeah. So it could have moved somewhere from the original point of entry.
I mean, I don't think they move far, but...
No, I think they can move quite some distance. When you hear stories of people, you've got a bullet, which we can't... A bullet lodged in your head, which you can't move, and it's moving through your brain, and you're gradually going to lose function. And that's a classic scenario from action movies, isn't it? And,
but you're not going to. It's not going to move from your arm to your ankle, is what I'm saying. It might move from one part of your leg to another part of your leg, but
yeah, I don't know how far it can move. A friend of mine, when he was young, was in a road accident and went through a windscreen, a rear windscreen. He was in the back of the car, and to this day, 40 years later, occasionally he'll get a spot like a acne, and he'll squeeze it, and there'll be a little bit of pus, and then a little splinter of glass will come out. He's still got this glass in his face from years and years and years ago.
Just goes to show. So that kind of could be a potential answer with finding this metal in his knee, but
and it was fairly sizable, wasn't it? It said the size of a fingernail.
That is a big old piece.
A fingernail, not a fingernail clipping, but a fingernail.
I mean, I'd be interested to know if he's ever had the metal examined or, had any metallurgical analysis done on it or anything like that.
There was no detail about that, was there?
No. And here's the thing where I struggle a little bit with the story. When someone wants to sell a book, they give you teasers. Like they'll say, oh, yes, there's this metal in my knee. And then, of course, you have to buy the book to find out, well, what did he do with the metal? Does he still have it? What was it made of? Did he have it analysed? So maybe, I don't know. But then I suppose an astute businessman would do that anyway, whether the story is true or not.
But you would think that if a medic had removed a foreign body from someone, they'd want to think, well, what is this and where has it come from? I don't recognise it as being any kind of. I can't say, oh, well, that's this, that, or whatever. It looks like I can't explain what this is. Let's stick it under a microscope and see what it's made of.
Well, it's not.
You'd think
it's not uncommon for people to have these things. I mean, you've just mentioned, yourself. You had the case of the splinter, the wood splinter, but your friend who has glass, periodically erupting out of his face. It's not uncommon for people to have splinters like that. So I don't know. A doctor removing it like a local GP. No, just because, you had a bit of metal splinter. Well, I don't know where it came from. Well, these things just happen,
Yeah, now Terry Lovelace has been diagnosed with PTSD twice in recent years, even though he never saw combat. But actually, there's been quite a lot of new research. As a military veteran, I've been, interested in following it. New research that pretty much says that PTSD can start in military basic training. That soldiers who have never seen combat, as Terry Lovelace hadn't, can still... The process of developing PTSD starts in basic training during the process of conditioning you transforming you from a civilian to a soldier.
Brainwashing, you mean?
It's more than that. It's obviously in basic training you'll learn how to put the uniform on and work all the equipment, fire a gun, fire your weapon, clean it, maintain it, all that's basic tactics. But it's all part of a more fundamental conditioning. For instance, if you were suddenly surprised, if you went into your bedroom and a naked man suddenly jumped out the cupboard wearing a leather mask and carrying a knife, what would your reaction be?
I have no experience directly like that. The closest experience I have to that, this is making me laugh thinking about it, was back when I used to live in Swindon. At one point I had 9 cats. And I got home one day and I heard a cat moving about under the stairs, and that wasn't an uncommon thing. And I had a look, and there was this great big moggy, this big bruiser of a cat. It was not one of my cats. This big furry thing with like scar over one eye and tatted ears, and it was clearly a male stray.
A real fighter.
Yeah. And I was shocked because I was expecting to see one of mine. There's this cat. And I remember saying out loud, "Who are you?"
Okay,
which was a shock response. It was a shock response. And I can only imagine, but if a naked man jumped out, it would get a similar sort of response. It'd be a shock and "Who are you?"
Who are you? And people, civilians will react in that way. Who are you? They might freeze because suddenly the situation that you thought was a safe situation has suddenly instantly changed into a situation that really isn't safe. It could be an information overload. You just freeze, or you scream, which is actually a good reaction. You're actually sounding an alarm, and if there's someone nearby, they could come to your aid, or you could frighten off the potential attacker, or you run away and save yourself. Now, those reactions are no good in the military. If you're moving through enemy territory, and you've got to be quiet, you're moving a small group through enemy territory, and suddenly an enemy soldier pops up in front of you, who's perhaps not where he's supposed to be. Maybe he'd left his post to go for a pee or something like that, but whatever. Suddenly pops up in front of you. Well, if you freeze, he'll shoot you in the face. If you run away, he'll shoot you in the back. If you scream, that sounds an alarm that will bring all his friends down on top of you. So those reactions aren't any good. What the military needs you to do is to be someone who, on instinct, without even thinking about how big is this guy, how tough does he look, you will attack. You will go straight for the throat, for the eyes, for the genitals. You will attack and kill. That will be your instant reaction. And that is why there are so many ex-service people in our prisons, many of whom have been diagnosed with PTSD, but because they've reacted and they've killed someone. And although there is this process, basic training for transforming civilians into soldiers who will react in this way that really isn't appropriate off the battlefield, there's no process for changing them back. They're just released into civilian life. So I can imagine that any as a serviceman myself, I can understand how someone who's never even been in combat could still have PTSD as a result of his military experiences.
I mean, and
or
let's
her
not
military
forget,
experience.
PTSD is not the sole domain of the military. I have PTSD, and I've never served in the military, but I had a traumatic event. So.
You had a traumatic event, yeah. In the military, it's I think a lot of people with PTSD they can relate back to a traumatic event when they say, well, yeah, it all happened because of this. And a lot of soldiers would come back from Iraq, Afghanistan, and say, well, yeah, I saw my mate get blown up and I've had PTSD ever since. But what new research is suggesting is that actually, mate, you were well down that road already before you had this traumatic event.
Well, and to be fair, I didn't use the phrase brainwashed. I didn't use that lightly because do you know what the difference between conditioning and brainwashing is?
No.
Nobody does. That's the point. It's a exact same thing.
Okay.
So, yeah. But let's call it conditioning because that's the more friendly term.
Brainwashing is a bit of a loaded term, isn't it?
It is, to be fair. But yeah, it is a traumatic event, and it will always be a traumatic event. And they traumatize you to break you down so that they can rebuild you. You know, and it's how cults operate as well.
Yeah,
what a lot of cults do is they will take people who've already had the traumatic event and recondition them, but
and cure them. And but I guess that's how the military works. We will traumatize you. We will totally denigrate the self that you brought to us, and we will rebuild. We'll give you a new
strip you of your humanity.
Yeah,
I don't have a very positive view of them. I fully appreciate the need for a military, and I very much appreciate those men and women who serve. However, the techniques and the systems, particularly, and it's something I think we've talked about it previously. The whole, when the military's done with a person, they just dump them out. They don't give them any reconditioning, no preparation for civilian. In fact, I know the UK military, having spoken with many ex-soldiers, they train soldiers, and perhaps you'll back this up, perhaps you won't, I don't know, but they train soldiers to hate civilians. And then dump them out and make them a civilian. Well, what's the first thing they're going to do? They're going to be full of self-hate, self-loathing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I remember it during basic training. One of the derogatory terms the drill instructors would hit you with if you say you're a bloody civvy. Bloody civilian. What are you doing here? You're not a soldier. You're a civilian.
Well, that's it. That's brainwashing you to hate civilians.
Yeah. Even though that's who you're here to defend.
Queen and country, mate. Queen and country, isn't it?
Supposedly, yeah. I'm fighting for my mates. Well,
anyway,
the US Marine Corps say it's core, God, and country in that order.
Right. Okay.
First and foremost, they are defending the US Marine Corps. Then God. And then
it makes me wonder how the atheists get on. But anyway, that's totally beside the point. We have gotten way off track here. So let's... I think we've pretty much covered the events of Terry Lovelace, or the pertinent events of this. So let's summarise. So what do you think? Is he... really simple question today, Neil. Is he telling the truth?
I believe that I think he's given a more truthful account than the guy we talked about last week, George Adamski,
yes.
who was quite an obvious huckster. Lovelace is someone who, I'm always suspicious. The fact that this happened around the same time as Close Encounters of the Third Kind came out. Quite often when people say, oh yeah, this happened to me 40 years ago, but I didn't want to say anything about it because I didn't want to be ridiculed and whatever. But actually, it could be that, oh, actually, I've only just thought of this story and I'm just going to say it happened 40 years ago.
No, but I'll address that specifically, though. These events are happening all the time. And we have talked on this show many times about lots of different events in lots of different periods of history in the 1930s, the 1940s, the 1950s, the 1960s, as well as the 70s and the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s, and so on and so forth. So if you didn't have any events around closing, that would look really odd, because that would be a complete absence of events where you'd have a sudden dip in events.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, these events, but it's the timing of Terry Lovelace's events. It's also the lack of detail. I mean, this piece of metal that was removed from his leg doesn't seem to have been analysed. There's no. Why didn't he take a picture of it? 2012, he probably had a camera in his phone.
Maybe. Maybe he did. Maybe the photos are in his book. I couldn't say for certain. Did he? I mean, was he able to keep it? Sometimes you have things removed, and I always remember, like back in the day, like when my mother had her appendix removed, she was able to bring it home. I mean,
in a jar,
in a little sort of file, yeah. Now, why you want to do that, I don't know, but they don't do that anymore now. Things that are removed get incinerated with medical waste. So maybe he didn't have access to the thing that was removed, and it was just described to him afterwards. I'm speculating. Purely speculating.
I said we can only speculate because we've got a lack of information. I mean, he talks about these little people. He also claimed that when he was about 8 years old, he started seeing little monkey-like people in his bedroom at night, which is that's a kind of Strieber kind of story, isn't
heading
it?
that way, isn't it? But then a lot of abductees will report sort of recurring experiences.
Yeah.
So would I be right in thinking you think he believes what he's saying, but your personal jury's out, or?
I'm saying my personal jury's out. I would like more information. I think. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, he's telling this story. He's written a book about a story that he didn't even want to tell until. I mean, the bit of metal being removed from his leg seems to have been the catalyst for him coming out and telling all this stuff and writing a book. So I want to know where that bit of metal.
I think.
That and retire, but yeah, I guess that and retiring, yeah.
But yeah, he's hit the point. He's retired. He can't now lose his job through saying these things. And yes, there's this thing that kind of brings it to the forefront of his mind. Absolutely, I can see that.
Yeah.
I can see that.
He said that although he'd always suffered from nightmares and hated being in wide open, exposed places, well, he must have been great fun with his buddies when he was in the military, mustn't he? Waking up screaming in the middle of the night, or
yeah. Well, I mean, I have not regular nightmares, but I do have nightmares. Nobody's ever said anything about me screaming in the night, though.
My wife has said things about me screaming in the night. I do get night terrors occasionally.
Right. No, I'll wake up in a panic, but yeah, I might toss and turn a bit. But, well, anyway, summarising then, I mean, this probably won't surprise you. I take him at his word on this.
Okay.
I think there's definitely an incident, but like you, I'd like to know more about this metal object that was removed from him. I'd like to see it examined, but I can't think of any reason not to accept what he's saying. But what do you think, listeners? Was Terry Lovelace making it up maybe to sell a book and make a bit of pocket money after he retired? Maybe it's just a marketing ploy. Or do you, like me, think that he's absolutely genuine in what he's saying? Do let us know via the usual means. You can email us, aliensexplored@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter and Facebook by searching Aliens Explode. It occurs to me I ought to get this on tape and just...
Display the tape, yeah.
I always say the same things. What else? Oh, yes, if you are one of our Patreon members, and you can do that by going to patreon.com/Aliens Explode and picking any tier. I mean, we've got some really lovely goodies up there, so have a look at what we've got at various tiers. But any tier will get you access to our exclusive Aliens Explored Discord server, so you can chat with us and like-minded people about this topic, about last week's topic, about any of the topics we discuss here, or anything else to do with UFOs for that matter. So have a look at that. But however you do it, let us know what you think, because we love hearing from you, don't we, Neil?
We do. We do. We can't get enough of it.
Join us next time when we'll be returning to a place we've been to a few times on this show already, the South Pole. But this time we're going to be looking at cosmic rays that are emanating from it. Ooh.
Cosmic rays from Antarctica.
Yes. Very telling. Very telling. So you don't want to miss that one. In the meantime, keep watching out for strange beams of light coming from triangular black craft, and keep watching the skies in general.
And keep a pinch of salt with you whenever anyone tells you about these things.
Not a bad idea. Anyway, take care for now. We'll see you next time.
Catch you next time. Bye-bye.
Aliens Explored is a Fecal Films production in association with Juicy Falls. Music by Darren Mafucci and editing by Stu Jackson. Find us on Twitter or Facebook by searching Aliens Explored, or visit us on aliensexplored.com.